Hello, my name is Elin Pendleton and welcome to my fourth instructional video on the Painting with an Attitude series. In this video I'm going to start showing you the times of day and how you can effectively depict the color of light in any scene that you choose to paint. In this video I do two paintings. The first one will be done in morning light, which shows you how to handle the time of day in the morning, even if your subject matter is taken at another time of day. And in the second painting, we even get a greater challenge. We're going to take a photograph that was taken at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're going to transform it into a moonlight painting. First, I'm going to take you on a journey to show you some source material that I've used for paintings of my own, and also what the end result looks like, and why you, the artist, need to make intelligent choices to change things in your paintings as far as color goes, so that you can effectively convey a time of day to the viewer. See that I also made major changes in the drawing, either adding additional things or taking things out or completely changing the background. That's part of who I am as an artist. But what the message is for this section is I want you to see how you need to think and consciously change the color of the things that you're painting. In this first photograph, it was taken in early morning light and the horse was at the tie rack being washed, but I decided to change it and convey evening light, and you'll notice in the painting that we have a suffusion of golden yellows throughout the entire painting and a lot of orange highlights. So that shows you evening light, where the artist makes the change from the reference material to a specific time of day. In the painting called Receiving Barn, I wanted to enhance the color and convey to the viewer the entire feeling of noon light. The photograph does not show you any of the blue that's inherent in noon light, and so when I made the painting I had to enhance all of the colors and let the viewer see the characteristic of noon light, which is blue. The photograph for Jumping for Joy was taken in early morning light, but I decided when I made the painting that I would go ahead and change it to evening light. Notice the oranges and the yellows that are completely in the colors that are in this new painting. In the reference photograph for Washing Up at Keeneland, I was seeing a lot of morning light, and so when I painted it I made sure to enhance the yellows that were found in the cool morning light of Keeneland. And of course, when you have a little steam, sometimes enhancing that makes a better story. Now here's a challenge. When you have a black and white photograph, you pretty well have free range to make any time of day that you like. And in this photograph, I decided I would make a late morning painting. And so when I painted it, knowing the colors of the Clydesdales, of course, it was easy to paint them. But then I had to make all of the light tell the viewer that this was not noon, this was not the evening, this was not early morning. It was definitely late morning or early afternoon. Of course, the shadows will help, but at different latitudes, shadows have different shapes. So you have to be mindful of where you are and what time of day you want to paint, and you can do that clearly to the viewer and to yourself by making good color choices. On my tabouret, I've laid out the 12 colors plus the white that I'll be using for all of the paintings in this video. The 12 colors consist of 3 groupings. We have the warm colors here, the cool colors here, and 2 earth colors that we use occasionally when we're painting specific subjects. Phthalo blue is our warm blue. Sap green is the warm green. Cadmium red light is the warm red. Cadmium orange is the warm orange. Cadmium yellow medium is the warm yellow. In the cool range we have 5 colors also, and they also are a blue, a green, a red, an orange, and a yellow. We have ultramarine blue, which is our cool blue. We have phthalo green, which is the cool green. We have Alizarin Crimson, which is our cool red. We have yellow ochre, which acts like a cool orange, even though it's not a true orange. And we have cadmium lemon, which is our cool lemon yellow. Our earth colors are burnt sienna and burnt umber. We have titanium white, which is the white that I use. Now you may notice that 2 of my colors are in caulking tubes. This is the way I order them when I want a quantity of color. I have caulking tubes of all of these colors, but I'm only showing you the larger tubes because I'm using them more frequently as I travel. I didn't have a cadmium orange, and I always use the caulking tube of white And you say, but Ellen, where do you get these paints that come in caulking tubes where you have to use a caulking gun in order to put them out on your palette? These paints are all manufactured by a company called Tricoat in San Leandro, California. You can find their website, artistoils.com. They have an 800 number too, which I will also put on the screen. I found these colors to be incredibly buttery without needing any medium whatsoever. However, I have put a medium out because occasionally I will need to do something that requires a glazing. For example, the steam coming off the back of a horse. And so I'll add a gel medium, which is designed for use with oils, and I will use that on my palette to mix to create the veils of color that I'm looking for. So again, we have the palette of warms and the palette of cools. Now, the guidelines for using these are quite simple. If it is in sunlight or it is nearby, you'll use these colors. If it is in shadow or it is far away, you'll be using these colors. Your white will be used to cool and lighten any of the colors that you have on your palette. Those of you familiar with my other 3 videos, the ones that preceded this, will remember this box. These are the colors that I was using when I was working in the field. Notice there's a red, a blue, a yellow, a green, and a red-orange, and a white. Well, when I discovered that I needed more versatility in my colors, I had to adapt my bins to make something more workable for both in the studio and in the field. And now what I use, and please don't laugh, I can't help it, these are pill boxes. They're the 7-day oversized pill boxes that are available from virtually any pharmacy store. Even some of your supermarkets will carry them. And you will see that I have arranged my whites in one side of one of the pill boxes, and I have my 5 cool colors here, and in the other side of this I have my earth colors, and I have my warms arranged also in order here. So when I set these on the palette, I generally work with them with the warms far away from me and the cools to my left and the white somewhere in the middle. Now, the reason there's 2 white bins open is one of the bins is used for mixing the warms and one of the whites is used for mixing the cools. Most of these brushes are filberts. I use a small round for making details, but the brushes themselves are not as critical as how you handle them. I use the ruby satins and also the silver stone and the Grand Prix, all made by silver brushes. I particularly like them because they last a long time and they hold up well. The brush does not make the artist, however. How you handle it is how an artist is born. 2 other items that you'll be needing if you're painting with oils and working on a glass palette is you'll need paper towels to wipe the excess paint off of your brush. You'll also need some scrapers. They're called glass scrapers. You can buy them from your home improvement center. And what they do is they clean your palette and allow you to go right back down to the glass when you're ready to clean up for the day. The first thing I'm going to do is to get rid of the white of this canvas. So I'm going to mix up a neutral value of something. It doesn't matter what it is, warm or cool at this point, it's irrelevant. All you need to do is mix up something that will take that canvas and make it less white. Now that the canvas is covered, I'm going to wipe it gently with a paper towel to remove the excess thinner and to get my surface ready for my drawing. When you work with color, one of the things you always have to be aware of is good value. Most of the paintings that I'm doing in this video series are very strong in value contrast, and one of the reasons that happens is because with good value contrast you usually get a good painting. I'm going to show you some paintings now, both first in color and then desaturated with the color removed. In this first painting, you'll see that the structure of the painting holds up even when the color is no longer there. Notice the second painting also carries a very strong value change. And finally, the third painting is the least value change of all, yet the value is still strong enough that you're able to easily identify the subject even without any color. We have to show the viewer with our abilities that this is the time of day that we want you to believe the scene is in. And so you have to make color choices based upon good, solid knowledge. Now the painting that I'm going to be doing today is a composite of several photographs that I took at Rolex in Lexington, Kentucky. When I work with a painting like this, what I tend to do is I look at the pictures and I get an essence of what the horse is doing and where the horse is going, and then I make a small thumbnail sketch. And now I'm going to do a larger oil version. My morning light is yellow, cool yellow, so I will be using a lot of the cool yellow over here on this bank of colors. I'm constantly thinking, okay, if it's morning light, I'm going to have yellow. So let's go ahead and get our sketch up there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a black, and I get black by mixing up Alizarin Crimson and phthalo green together. It makes a very wonderful, luscious black. Now I want my horizon line above the middle. It's always a good idea to put it either above or below the middle just for good design. You can see I don't do a laborious drawing of the horse and rider because I know that I'm going to paint it. It's a lot more important to paint it and find what I'm looking for. I will find those details later. Now remember what I told you. It's all about the color. And I'm going to lay in broad fields of color to develop the entire painting without any concern about where two edges meet, because that comes later with the detail brush. So I'm going to dig into my cool, and as I dig into the cool whites, yellow, remember that yellow is in there, I'm going to add the blue for the distant sky. Oh, that's a lovely blue-green color. Ooh, yummy. And I'm going to let that color determine my sky. Yeah. There's enough yellow in there to tell the people who are looking that this is morning. Morning light. Boom. Morning light. Cool yellow. Morning light. Have I said it enough? Morning light. Cool yellow. Morning light. Okay. Setting the tone now. I leave that alone. I don't want to do any more to it. My next big paint is a scary one. I'm going to grab some of that cool green out of my box. That's phthalo green. And I'm going to lay in this shadow down here. Oh man, that's powerful. But I love it. I get that shadow in there and get it taken care of. Done deal. I'm also going to lay in the shadow with a little bit of alizarin to gray it on the tree. There's a tree over here, you see. Establishing my structure. And then I'm going to go ahead and start laying in some of the distant trees, taking that same green and mixing it into the sky color and adding some red and some yellow ochre to kill it back. Cool is the distance. And I'm going to put in those distant trees. I also want those distant trees right up to that dark head of the horse so it'll show up. That cool green, add a touch of blue to it, coming up next to the brilliant red of the guy's jacket is really going to make a nice statement for the viewer. Oh yeah. Now notice I don't care about edges at this point. Now, as we move distant, we have to stay with the cool colors, even though we're talking distant warms. So I mix in some yellow ochre and some of the cool yellow to create a distant field. And you see these beautiful colors are absolutely beautiful across there. As I move forward, coming down into the foreground further, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add more of the real yellow, the warm yellow, to actually create it to appear yellower in the morning light. All I have to remember is that if something's in the sunlight in the foreground, I use my warm colors. Now I'm going into my sap green and my cadmium yellow medium, and I'm laying in that foreground grass in the sunlight where values are strong and change rapidly. Look at that. Am I worried about my focal point? No, it'll take care of itself. I have a strong philosophy that says if you're painting a subject, you want to have everything around it sing in harmony before you actually paint the subject, and the subject will take care of itself. In the middle ground back there, there's a shadow that comes across right about there, and I'm going to lay that in. Now that shadow is lighter and less of a contrast than this shadow. It has the cool yellow in it because it's morning light. Boom. And it also has the phthalo green in it because of the fact that it's a cool shadow. Okay, now it's time to think about those trees. And those trees are gray, and I always get my grays quite easily by mixing together my alizarin with my phthalo green and adding white to it to kill it back. When I say kill it back, it just means make it less of a dark. See, there's the tree. And I'll paint it in. It kind of stops the action here. And I'm going to paint a second tree over to the left. It'll be further back, so it picks up some of the background color. Again, remembering that the color of the morning is yellow, and everything that's in shadow is going to be blue-green because of the blue sky that's overhead. Now I'm going to mix into some more of my yellow-green. And I'm going to add some of the cool yellow to that yellow-green. And I'm going to sit back in here and come in here and add in some lighter areas to contrast slightly with that shadow, just slightly. And you see how we are creating interesting marks, the cool yellow with the warm yellow-green. As we move closer to the viewer, we go to the warm colors over here, and we get brighter yellow. And again, we just lay in these marks. Isn't that fun? You're going to have enough interest here when you actually paint this part. So making the rest of it interesting now means that when you get the time to settle down and paint your focal point, the rest of it's going to be like a symphony that's playing in beautiful harmony behind your central focal point. Isn't that an amazing concept? And I'm going to go back in and remix some more of that sky color, keeping in mind that it's morning, so it has yellows, cool yellows. And I'm going to come back in and paint some of that sky. Crop that guy's head, mix it into the distant trees so that they kind of blend and fall away. Now remember, every painting you do goes into what I call the uglies, which is a stage where they just get like they're just, oh man, you know, you can't wait to be... Ugly paintings are ugly paintings. We all make them. But the problem is, so few of us go out the other side to make them beautiful again. Now, I haven't painted any branches on the tree yet. I will do that later at my second pass. The first pass is just to get the canvas covered so we know what we're working with. The sunlit side of these trees has to be done with warm colors, my sap green and my warm yellow, and I'm going to add just a touch of orange to it because not all trees are the same green. And then when I paint in the light side of the tree, you can see that it becomes believable because I've added some of that touchy orange to it. Okay, now I'm going to lay in the major colors that are on the horse and rider. Details come later. Okay, the horse is dark, so I'm going to go into my burnt umber, finally. And I'm going to pick up some of that dark red to add to it. The horse and rider shadow side. Umber, Alizarin Crimson, shadows on the horse. See, with enough paint on the canvas, I can take my fingers and literally run right into it and change the configuration of it, the actual conformation of the horse as I'm painting. Because I've got enough paint on there, I can really make a difference. Now, the jacket in shadow is going to be a little bit of cad red mixed with alizarin. And I'm not going to worry about the details. You see, most of the time you rush and you pull the details in way too early. And I don't need to do the details at this point. I've got to get it right. And I add the details in the second pass. I just want to get the lay-in so that it looks approximately right to me, so that when I do come back the second time around, I don't have a lot of corrections to make. Morning light suffused with yellow, cool yellow in the sky. Yellow is even in the distant trees, although it's the cool yellow. You've got your warm yellows with your sap green. You've got your phthalo green in the foreground, and you've got your sap green with yellow, cadmium yellow medium here. No white here, none. If you put white in here, it's going to look not right, because shadows are dark, contrast is high at this area. Okay, at this point, I'm going to stop, clean my brushes, and set this aside. Wasn't that fun? The first pass on the painting just gets the canvas covered with an awful lot of paint. That gives us something to work with and against which to play when we start pulling out the details and refining the painting and pulling it to its finished portion. Okay, now I need to clean my palette. Remember, I told you what you need is a couple of paint scrapers and a paper towel. Oh, that was good. Hey, nobody's perfect around here. Now, you see all your colors are still here in piles. You can just put lids on those and put them away. But here, I just scrape that paint right off. Could I save it? Sure. But I've discovered that in doing my color, it's a heck of a lot better if I'm always thinking with and working with good, clean color. Burnt sienna, morning sunlight mixed with a little bit of that cool yellow. Because remember, everything you do is influenced by the time of day. When we do our morning light picture, every color that we mix is influenced by that yellow of the early morning light. Late evening light is orange, noon light is blue, early or late morning and early afternoon light is greenish. So given that knowledge, when you paint, you have to constantly be mixing up colors that will show you those different color times of day. And early morning light, as this painting is suffused with a cool yellow and a warmer yellow as it moves towards you. So as I paint my grasses in my foreground, I mix up a nice yellow green and I go ahead and lay that in. Now, the other thing about painting is that in the early morning, as shadows and such comes towards you, they become darker and the contrast is lighter. As the shadows go back, they're grayer and softer. I may have mentioned that earlier, but I can't remember if I did, so I'll say it again. So that when I paint in these dandelions back here, they won't be pure white. They'll be white with some yellow, so that they look real. Do always watch the handling of the brush, because that's how you create this almost energetic vibration as you paint. I'm now going to go down to a smaller size brush, a number 2 filbert, And I'm going to start doing some of the major details. It's on the coat with very thick paint. And what it does is it shows me that sunlight on the front side of that jacket. The back side was alizarin with a little bit of the cool yellow in it. However, the front side of this guy's coat is absolutely pure cadmium red light. Now you know that the pants on this guy are going to be white with a touch of yellow. The shadow side of the pants are going to go down to the cool blue, which is ultramarine, and white. I could do a very careful drawing and then transfer it up here, but I prefer to find the horse in my paintings. If I can remove enough of the background and enough of the foreground, I'll end up with a horse that looks pretty good. Something that was told to me by a well-known artist was, don't give them too much information, Ellen. They'll figure it out. If you give them too much information, you've kind of insulted the viewer to make them think they can't figure it out themselves, and that's the last thing you want to do with people who are interested in your work. You always want to give them just enough information so that they can figure it out. And those two little buttons are what make it come alive and make it look even more like what it's supposed to look like in the picture. Sometimes those details are where it all counts. Rains that are coming down in the sunshine. Gee, that's yellow. Gee, I wonder why. Well, you know, it's yellow because we have yellow morning light. Nip out these ears and make them look more real. Now, remember what I told you. If you mess up, see, now he looks like a mule. We'll fix that. And nip those ears and make them look just perfect. Boom. See, by doing things in two times, you have dry paint underneath and you have wet paint on top, and that's how it works. We have the rise above and the eyelid itself. It's amazing that those two little marks bring life to the painting. how you end up doing morning light, suffused with cool yellow all the way across the canvas. Everything is influenced. Well, the morning light painting is finished now, and remember the things that you learned. If you're painting with morning light, you'll want to fuse all of your colors with some of that cool yellow or the yellow ochre in order to make the colors seem to be filled with that wonderful clear morning light. I hope that you'll stick with me because it's time to go now for the second painting. We're going to be doing moonlight. And what I do when I want to paint a moonlight scene is I just drop from my palette 4 of the warms. I get rid of my cadmium red light, my cadmium orange, my cadmium yellow, and my burnt sienna. I do not open those 4 bins, and I mix all of my other colors using the remainder of the cools and the few warms that are low in value. I've chosen for my subject matter a photograph that I took when I was on a horse trail ride, and it shows a horse on the side of a mountain, and the time of day is approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon. On my already primed canvas, I've done the sketch, just drawing in the shape of the horse and the rider. I outline also the shadow that's on this horse because that's an integral part of the design. Don't forget when you actually plan your paintings to be sure that you have a good strong value contrast so you can depict a time of day, and to make sure that you incorporate your shadows into your design. I'll be using a 5/8 inch filbert made by Silver to lay in my background and my darks. Now, the sky is moonlight. I'm going to start at the top. So I go straight into my ultramarine blue, and I just go ahead and paint that thickly across the top of my canvas. A dark sky is an essential ingredient in a moonlight painting. Now as I move further down onto the canvas, I go ahead and add Alizarin Crimson, which is my dark red. Notice my brushwork is not all that precise. It really isn't. It doesn't have to be, really. Not at this first layer. We just want to get this paint onto the canvas, and having loose brushwork also enhances the finished product. It gives the viewer something to look at when they're not actually looking at what you intend them to see, which is your subject matter for your painting. So now I'm going to mix up some Naples yellow, alizarin, and white plus ultramarine blue, and I'm going to paint that distant mountain back in there. Again, just getting it in. And I'll add more blue to it to darken it down. Loose brushwork. Again, this part is not very interesting. Now as I come towards the viewer and I get into this green bush that's here, I go ahead and add dip right into my pure phthalo green, especially where I know I'm going to have some lights. I want to make sure that that's real nice and dark. And then I add my sap green, which is my warm green, in the lit areas, let's say moonlit, and the change of temperature makes it happen. The change of temperature is what brings the viewer's eye knowing without a shadow of a doubt that that is in moonlight. Because again, this part is not where the painting is. The painting is here. This is just the orchestra behind the major players. And if I want some distant vegetation, you already know that things get lighter and the valued contrast gets less as it goes further away. So as I paint in the distant greens that are out here, I'll add some white and some blue to it in order to make it work as a distant, blending it into the green of the distant fields that are out there. Okay, now this area is in moonlight. Amazing how it already looks like a night painting. By getting, Normally somebody would pick a yellow-green and put this up here thinking, well, that's what the light is on the top of the bush. But we don't want the yellow-green because yellow is off our palette for this special type of light. Yes, now the shadow is going to be dark green and ultramarine blue. You can even go down to black if I want it to. And we have legs dissecting the shadow where they are actually in the moonlight, which was the sunlight. And then there's this foot that's kind of canted off to the left that looks very interesting. Lay in some darks where I know I'm going to have some lights. This is another bunch of rocks and bushes over here. And where I know I'm going to be having some lights, I go right ahead and put the area around it in dark to create an interesting pattern. But I never use the cadmium because that's no longer on my palette. But I go right back down to the dark green when I go into the shadow under this bush. And I may put a shadow coming in over here just to hold this corner down. Wasn't in my initial plan, but it'll certainly look better if I have it. Now, the only areas that are left to paint are the figure and the area in moonlight that is no longer in shadow. Remember, ultramarine at the top, coming down to alizarin at the distant mountain range. Now, whether you make a light sky or a dark sky, that's up to you. It's your choice. I chose a dark sky for this painting, but I could have made it a lighter value and made some more contrast with the trees. To paint the area around the horse that's in the moonlight, I'm going to go into my cool white and I'm going to mix it with phthalo green. Moonlight can be one of two colors. It can be blue-green, which is what phthalo is, or it can be even bluer. You'll look at Frank Tenney Johnson's work and you'll see an awful lot of the blue and the grade blue that he was very fond of using. It's so easy to make this work, she says. And I know you're groaning and you're thinking, oh, I'll never be able to do it. But you can. All you have to do is remember that in moonlight we drop those 4 warms off of our palette. Do you remember what the 4 warms are? I'll give you a hint. 3 of them begin with the word cadmium. That helped, didn't it? See, it already looks like moonlight, and I haven't done anything special to this yet, except paint in some broad areas of flat color. I think I'll link that with some grassy looking stuff. We can vary the concentration of the light and the dark, but the idea is to get enough of these classic oils onto the canvas so that we have something to work with at another time. Now you know me, I'm going to come in here and put this in, and then I'm going to come back with a second passage and make it, there's the rocks, and make a second pass with more color and more details. Moonlight, what you have to do is drop the warms off your palette and hold it to just your cool colors. And I haven't even started the figure yet, and yet already I know that you can look at this and say, yep, it's moonlight. You have to think about what color you want to use. That's the issue with working with this system, is you're constantly using that matter between your ears to make sure that you've got something that's going to hold for the viewer and for what you wanted to do. See how nicely that's turned out? And I haven't done anything at all as far as detail. Soften my edges. Oh, that's why we have fingers. And then you say, Ellen, we got a horse to paint. How are you going to paint this horse and rider in the moonlight? Well, that's pretty easy. Just watch it happen. To move to a slightly smaller brush. And as I move into the horse, this horse happens to be a palomino, which makes an interesting bit of diversion here. The only cool yellow I have that I can use is the yellow ochre, or the lemon yellow, which is a greenish yellow. And I want to stay with the yellow ochre, which is actually an orange, and just add a lot of white to it. Look at how far we can get to the light on this horse. He's got a mane, and I can go down into yellow ochre, and I can also pick up the burnt umber, so I can get my shadow areas on this guy. He's a palomino, so he should look that way. If I were to use cadmium anywhere on this horse, I would be making a huge error. I can go to the cool red and add some of the cool red into his hide and keep the feel for moonlight as I move across his flanks and start painting down lower on his body. But we do have some wonderfully lit areas on this guy, and I want to be sure that you're able to see it. My lightest light is right at the point of that hindquarter, and then it folds away from there down underneath where I can actually use some of that red. So we do have kind of a red-green composition. Look at how that beautifully that goes in there. And of course we'll get all the details. He's got a great tail that's flipped in the light. He's got a very nice face that's actually looking at you, which is a most interesting little difference. He's got nice dark ears. And of course, you know me, I don't worry too much about the riders. They'll take care of themselves. We got a great little jacket that's kind of yellowish, more yellow than the others, so that's this color. And again, you know me, I have to lay in the great big areas and then come back and do all the details. There's the neat part about this rider is it actually is a female. She has on blue jeans and jacket behind her saddle. Now those color marks are absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to go ahead and do some more of the details on the darks that are on the figure, because those darks are quintessentially important to show you how this works. Again, the idea behind a moonlit painting is to drop 4 colors off your palette and concentrate fully using the limited range of the ones that you have left to be creative to mix the colors that you need out of the remaining colors. So as I lay in these lights that are made strictly from cools, they actually look a lot warmer than they really are. And if you're careful, you won't make too many mistakes. And the mistakes you do make, you'll be able to clean up. When in doubt, scrape it out. That's a good adage. I've done my share of scraping. Lots of it. It's just inherent in the beast. Put some illusions of grass there. Make sure we get this. This is so cool, this part of the shadow, because it shows the horse's ears, just like that, one brush mark, and it shows the rein that the horse's rider has, and it really gives us this illusion that we're seeking of this horse standing in the moonlight. Just for fun, I can't resist, I'm going to go ahead and pick my little tiny brush, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a few stars. The stars really do make it look. You can mash them with your fingers so they'll look like nebulae, or make them softer. And even in this soaking wet paint, I can still get some stars on my horizon out there. That looks like Orion laying on his side. You can put in clouds to create another value out here to lighten it up, and I may come back and do just that. I do change my paintings. Sometimes if there's compositional errors in them that just scream at me and say, I can't stand it, I've got to be changed, I will make a compositional correction. But not an experiment. Notice there's a real vast difference between a compositional experiment, which may or may not work out, and a compositional correction, which is a thought-provoking correction. to fix all of this later. But you see, if you can get it this right, at this point, fixing later is just a real simple operation. And painting fast is part of it, yeah, but it's not all of it. It's knowing what you're doing, making good color choices at the get-go, and then you'll have a good painting to show for it later on when you come back to do the second layer. Again, moonlight scenes are not difficult. The first layer of paint is now down and a little bit dry. I've let it set for a couple of days and it's now tacky to the touch. There isn't any real wet area except the white paint. So I'm going to go ahead and put the details on and finish this painting up. Now, the details are nothing more than worrying about the transition zones between the lights and the darks, and also the details, the fine calligraphic marks that makes the painting into a visual delight for the eye. All of this loose brushwork back here and then on the perimeter of the painting will probably stay exactly as you see it. There's no need to change it. The feel of the painting is already in place. In the dark because of the nature of moonlight. Reflected lights don't happen at all in moonlight, so your darks have got to stay way down there in value, even though the tendency is to want to make them lighter. I tend to paint the horses negatively, you know, in other words, I paint everything and it turns into a horse because of what I don't paint. Well, except for a few more details, I have pretty well taken care of the essence of what I wanted to convey in this painting, which is the feeling of moonlight, strong moonlight, full moon night, and I'm just kind of now enhancing some of the areas that I went over with the first pass to create an additional feeling of strength in this moonlit light. You see, I'm putting lighter areas against dark areas. Again, the value contrasts are greatest when things are nearby. The value contrasts are less the further back you get into the picture plane. And all of these marks that I'm making are small calligraphic gestural marks that just give an essence of movement to make it more visually exciting for the viewer to look at. But the details that I put in, I had to do rather quickly because I'm running out of tape and time to tell you all I need to tell you at the closing, and my goodness, I had no idea it would be so involved, but I sure love it, and I hope that you'll get something out of it as well. So there's not much more to do to this except sign it. I'm going to do the signature. I've brought in a close-up for you, and I'm going to do it in 4 passes. 1, changing the color slightly. 2, just the way I do my signature. 3, filling the brush each time with a slightly different color. That's the way I like to sign. Colorful, you know. 4. Oh heck, a little more right there. I could spend a lot of time on the signature, but my goodness gracious sakes, that's not as important as the painting. But I like to make them pretty. Thank you for joining me in the first in the series of color videos that I'll be putting out. This video, of course, you saw me paint morning light and moonlight. And in the next two videos, I'll be doing sunrises and sunsets, and I'll also be doing noon light and afternoon light and backlighting. So you'll be able to see lots of different times of day. Laid out with a logical way to understand how the colors are where they are and why you need to use them when you use them where you do. Now, if that wasn't confusing, nothing is.